Oh, okay, sorry about that. I didn't have enough time on my chip. I only have a 2 gig chip in this, so I have to use my time frugally. Um, Back to what I was saying. If I put these bearings in this rod, and hopefully it'll come out right, because these are Chinese bearings. These bearings here on the other side say 020. Can't see that, so this crank's been turned 20 under, and it's used oversized bearings. But I don't see any problems with this crank really, so I'm going to do that. Like I said, I'm going to do the PTO side first, and then probably rods, and then probably the flywheel side. Keep all your stuff separate. Here's your flywheel bearings from your flywheel side. Some things I want to show you while I got this thing apart. There's this is your flywheel side. Your flywheel side. This is the oil control. This is how it controls the oil. There's a really tight fit right here. It's quite tight, and then it has a sort of a flange, and it catches the oil and runs it back out this hole here. And then it has a cork seal that actually seals around the crankshaft. Of course, I have another one in my rebuild kit. It come with a cork seal. It also come with a rubber seal, and it's probably for a Model 60. Incidentally, that's what these rods came out of, is a Model 60. The Model 60 has a 1/4 inch bigger stroke, but the rods are identical, only they take inserts. So evidently what they did is, instead of making the rods slightly bigger, they stroked the crank, and also the cylinder, or the piston, has different rings on it on the 60, but the rods are the same. So I'm going to use the same rods. Just for giggles, I'm going to put this Babbitt bearing on there and measure it as well, and see where my clearances were on the rod journal. Back to the oil deal. This has a seal that goes in it that seals against the crank. Probably when we put this all together, we're going to use some grease or some lubricant, like Lubriplate or something like that. The rod bearing side, or the main bearing side of the flywheel, also has shims. You can see that stack of shims there pretty well. We're going to look at the clearances on those, and if it's too big, we're going to take one of the smallest shims out, which is probably going to be 1/1000 of an inch. It's very small, just very thin, like paper thin. I cleaned all my bearing housings up and whatnot, made sure the oil galleries were clean. I took out a Q-tip and run through them. Always somebody trying to text me. And then as well as the oil lines, I took the oil lines off the oil pump and run a Q-tip through those as well, making sure that I get all the Q-tip out of there, because the worst thing you could do would be to get a Q-tip jammed up in there. But I cleaned everything all up in my solvent, which essentially is old gas, and used rubber gloves to do it. Do you remember me telling you about the indexing mark on the clutch driver? It has a little V-notch. You can see the little V-notch right there. And indeed, this was not indexed correctly on the crankshaft. And I'll show you, if I can find a flashlight, there it is, the correct indexing mark on the flywheel, or on the crankshaft rather. There's a bunch of marks, a bunch of pound marks on this, on the end here. But it was setting right here. And if you can see, I know there's a punch mark right there, but there's also a little line. I made the punch marks, and I did that with my air impact. To try to drive the driver off of there. Well, I had the puller on there. It was stuck really well. But there's the smallest little original mark right there, and that's where it needs to go. And just being off that one little deal like that will put it out of balance and make it bunny hop. So I'm thinking that's why it was hopping. Also, I put a new indexing mark on my crank gear as well, right there. And that's going to coincide and fit right in that mark right there. You can see little marks fit in the center there of the cam gear to line everything up. So let me get working here. Oh, there's one more thing I want to show you. One more thing. This is on the other side, that big gear that runs off the clutch, and it has a bearing underneath it, and the bearing it was so bad that it was rubbing into that. The bearing wore out on the outside one's not too bad. The inside one's really bad. I haven't got it out yet to see it, but what there is there's a hole in the block in the transmission, and oil goes in there, and then it runs down here and it lubricates the bearing. Just kind of a splash kind of a deal, which works famously unless there's a blockage right here. And there is a big plug right here, like I don't know what it was, like a hornet built a nest in there or something. I don't know how it would have got up in there or whatever, but there was a big plug of mung up in there, and it wouldn't let the bearing get any oil. So that's probably what wore it out prematurely, because the transmission was full of lube, and that's what lubes it. And even if it had mud in it, it would get lubricant, some sort of lubricant to it, but it had a plug right there and it wouldn't let it get any. So yeah, you might want to look at that on your tractor as well. Alright, let's get after this, and I'll come back with my findings.